All right, so I'm going to kick us off. I still see some people coming in, but we'll let them get in and get settled. But hello, everybody, again. Welcome back to MasterAdvisor. Today is November 3rd, 2022, and this is episode number 61. We're going to be talking about Mexico and Caribbean all-inclusives today, but I have a couple of announcements to make first, and then we do have a sponsor for today's session, so let's get to it. The first announcement is that I want to thank everyone for joining us a couple of weeks ago with Victoria Boom Garden to talk about connecting with luxury suppliers. I know that is an important topic, not just for luxury suppliers, but for all advisors dealing with all kinds of suppliers. And it really was a great informative session. If you missed it and want to rewatch it, it is available on demand for free on our YouTube page and on our training page. We're going to drop the link to the chat we're going to drop the link to that page in the chat right now in case you want to check it out. There's a lot of content on there, including MasterAdvisors on service fees, on terms and conditions, and one we recently did on TikTok. So if you want to head over there, please do so. And if you are over there, you can help us a whole lot by subscribing and liking the videos to help us continue to grow this community of travel advisors. I also want to announce that our next session will be back here in 2 weeks to talk about FITs in Europe. Again, this is episode 61, so we've done a lot, but we've yet to talk directly about building FITs in Europe, and it's something we're really excited to do. We have a great travel advisor lined up too for that session, so if you're interested, we're going to get that link out too soon to register for that one, which again will be in 2 weeks, as always, Thursdays, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And lastly, just talking about seeing the chat going. Lastly, before I introduce our sponsor, I want to remind everyone that the chat is open. And we're going to be taking some questions as we go along today. So please don't be shy. Drop any constructive comments or any questions in there, and we're going to do our best to get them answered. But the chat really does add a whole lot to these sessions, and we like the sort of interaction with everyone we have with all the advisors on the call. So please use the chat. We're going to do our best to make it as constructive as possible today. All right. So without further ado, I do want to introduce our sponsor for today, Apple Leisure Group Vacations. I'd like to welcome Brian Aylhurst, Business Development Manager from ALG Vacations, talk to us a little bit before we get started today.
All right, great. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on the call. I've been watching and listening to these sessions, and I think they're great. I was hoping I would personally have the opportunity to join one, and here I am, so thank you again. And I love this topic, adding even more value to Mexico and the Caribbean. It almost sounds impossible with how amazing these destinations are, but we are definitely doing that in a number of ways for both the end client and our direct client, the travel advisor, kind of a win-win situation. One great program that we have at ALG Vacations is our Exclusive Perks program. Exclusive Perks gives your customers more than ever before. We negotiate with some of the most in-demand sun and sand hotels in Mexico and the Caribbean. By doing so, we're providing clients with a wealth of exclusive added value amenities they won't find anywhere else. And these amenities go well beyond your typical early check-in and late checkout, which I actually do love. They include things like room amenities, which always make you feel a little extra special, complimentary massages at the spa, private dinners, family photos, and the list goes on. We and our hotel partners, of course, really thought outside the box when negotiating the exclusive amenities for this program. And all exclusive perks can be found right in VAX when booking a participating hotel or resort. Not hard to find, just click the added value once you find the resort that you're looking for. And another great option we offer at ALGV is one of our newer reward programs, Get Paid to Upgrade. It's actually exactly what it sounds like. Travel advisors get paid an additional 2% commission on the entire hotel portion of the booking just by upgrading to a higher room category. And this is what I meant before is the win-win situation. Your clients are getting that higher room category to enhance the value of their vacation, whether it to be a suite, a beachfront room category, or whatever the case may be that's available through this program. And then travel advisors are making that additional 2% commission. You can be making up to 18% commission on the hotel portion of the package, which I've heard is an average of about $100 per booking, which is fantastic. Just like our exclusive perks amenities, these room upgrades can all be found in VAX. And of course, more details, including participating hotels and resorts, can be found on the brand homepages. And this also gives advisors more of a competitive advantage that you won't find with anyone else. This program gives you the chance to offer room categories that OTAs, for instance, may not have access to. So you're giving them something that they may not be able to get unless they're booking directly through you. And lastly, I'm trying to go fast here. Hopefully I have time for one more. Another, and maybe the best way to add value to a sun and sand vacation is with our sister company and very close partner, Amstar. After all, it's all about making it an experience that your clients won't forget. There's so many options that can really enhance the memories that your clients are making. Just by including perhaps a private transfer from the airport to the hotel, it kicks off what's going to be a vacation they'll always remember. But remember, Amstar, it's so much more than just transfers. We offer over 1,000 tours, activities, and excursions through Amstar in Mexico and the Caribbean. Don't get me wrong. So many of the all-inclusive resorts, for instance, that we offer in these destinations are fantastic, really showing the history and culture of the destination within the resort walls. They're fun and relaxing. The food is great, but adding an excursion or two is what really makes that getaway unforgettable. So whether it's a catamaran cruise, swimming with the dolphins, zip lining, or even shopping in local markets, there's so many options you can offer your clients. And of course, you make commission off of these. That's that win-win scenario I keep mentioning. But I think I'm pretty much out of time. But thanks so much again for having me on the call. I'm a huge fan of these, and have a fantastic rest of the day.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian. That was great. I know I see a lot of advisors I've met along the way at the recent Ascend conference in Cancun on the call here. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with ALGV, and I'm sure we're going to talk about more as we get along today. But let me introduce our guest. My guest for today's session, who I'm very, very excited to talk to, is Ashley Bennington, an advisor at JCo Travel near Rochester, New York. She's going to be talking to us about her agency, about adding value to clients' vacations in these destinations, and hopefully a couple of other things as we go along today. But first, I just want to welcome Ashley to the call and just say thank you so much for your time and for talking to us today.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be a part of this. I love watching them. So it's really cool to be able to participate now.
Well, like I said, I know you were busy. I know you juggle a lot of things, but I just want to give you sort of an opportunity to just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience. Tell us sort of how long you've been in business and what type of clients do you typically serve?
Yeah, so I have been a travel advisor for 8 years now, and I mainly focus on family travel and multi-generational travel, also a little bit with special needs travel. I have 4 kids of my own, so that's why I kind of focus on that, because we travel a lot. So, you know, that I know what I know because it's what I do. And I also have been a nurse for 18 years. So that's why I kind of also look at special needs and mobility challenge travel as well.
Okay. So you mentioned you serve a lot of families and multi-gen groups. I'm just curious, like how important is Mexico and Caribbean to you and to that segment for your business? Again, and you mentioned you're in Rochester, New York, so a very typically cold environment. And I imagine these sun destinations are trending amongst your clients constantly.
Definitely, especially going into this time of year where we've already seen snowflakes up here. Mexico and the Caribbean is probably about 90% of my business. And it's destinations I've been to, destinations that are easy for most people to get to, and really family-friendly destinations. So that's definitely a super, super important part of my business.
Yeah, and I know we want to get into the topic, which is specifically adding value, but I mean, everyone's talked about the demand and talked about how multi-gen was going to sort of trend pretty heavily coming out of COVID. I'm curious if that's what you're seeing now from your position in your agency. Is multi-gen, is that market really, really strong right now? Is that kind of stuff really what we're seeing?
It definitely is. People, especially people that don't live close to other family members, they didn't get to see each other for so long. And a lot of multi-gen families, they do trips every year, every 2 years. And there were 2 years where they weren't able to do that. So now it's really, the green light, especially since the US ended their COVID testing requirement to re-enter the US. It has been, green light is on and everyone is wanting to get away and kind of escape and reconnect.
So the question we really want to answer today is why clients should use a travel advisor, why your clients use you, they'd like to book through you rather than booking any other way, how advisors sort of add value to these kind of vacations and trips to these kind of destinations. I'm just curious, I know it's a sort of a general question, and I know it probably varies wherever you're talking about, Ashley, but why do you think your clients like working with you?
I think the biggest reason is because I know them. They have a question, they shoot me an email, they have a phone number they can call if something happens. And there's a relationship that's built there. And I feel like, especially nowadays with people, scams, things like that, having that personal relationship is really, really valuable to clients, and they really appreciate that.
Yeah, we have about 80, 85, 86 advisors on the call with us. I'm curious because I get a different answer from everyone all the time with that. I mean, what would you say is the reason your clients like working with you the best? I'm just curious what everyone sort of has to say. But we spoke earlier in the week, Ashley, and you mentioned how important the initial consult is with clients to be able to sort of add this value and be able to see the spaces where you can sort of grow a vacation into. I'm curious if you could talk to us a little bit about what kind of questions you ask during your consults to place clients not only at the right property, but also at the right destination.
Yeah, so I with every new to me client, I do require a phone consultation. And that is for a couple reasons. Biggest, getting to know the client, but also to help weed out the tire kickers, because we're all busy. And we want to make sure that the client has some stake in the game. So on my phone calls, the first thing I ask people is, tell me what your vacation looks like to you.
Okay.
And then I just listen, and that tells you so much. Some people are looking for relaxing and kids in the kids club. Other people are really looking to take adventures together. Another thing that I ask is, have you traveled before? And when you have traveled, where have you stayed? What did you like? What did you not like? And then also, where they're going to be leaving from, obviously, is a big thing. And not so much as far as like pricing flights or anything for me, but if someone is going from the East Coast, it's going to be very difficult for them to get to the West Coast of Mexico and vice versa. So that kind of helps me hone in on where I should start looking, because there's so many great resorts on each destination. So those are the big ones.
Yeah, and we just Jennifer in the chat says she starts with asking them the same. You came to me for a reason. What is the reason? And I think that's a pretty simple way to look at it, and probably a very effective way to look at it too. To sort of get that question out, not having to pull it out. It was a pretty smart way of doing things. Ashley, you mentioned the tire kickers. I'm curious. I mean, how do you, when you say it helps to weed out the tire kickers? I'm curious, are there any red flags in those initial conversations that will make it and put it in your head that these people maybe are tire kickers, or maybe they aren't a good fit for you and your agency?
Definitely. People, can you beat this price?
Okay.
I want a cheap resort. I personally, being a mom of four, getting the best value for your dollar is something that I focus on in my everyday life, especially lately with how things are getting more expensive. So I personally, don't want to focus on cheap. I want to focus on value. And that is a big part of what I tell my clients is, I'm here to get you the best value for your dollar. It's not necessarily going to be the cheapest resort, but there's a reason for that. So those are some of like the red flags that kind of clue me in. Maybe this won't be a good fit.
Yeah, we've had that talk a little bit on a few other times on this series, and it's always that question is something that everyone sort of points at as a red flag is can you beat a price, or how much money can you save me, things like that. And we've had that before with people on here talking about service fees and a lot of other topics, and that seems to be a common question, to know that clients are coming to you specifically looking for a price is sort of a red flag. All right, so let's talk about your dealings with clients, because once you're able to sort of place them, or once you're able to sort of get an idea of what might be best or appropriate for them to send them on a vacation, we talked earlier in the week, and you said you do your best to make it easy for clients, to make not only planning but actually traveling as easy as possible. And one thing you pointed out was these auto reminders that are built into your CRM. I was hoping you could talk to us a little bit about those.
Yeah. So in addition to making things easy for my clients, I want to make it easy for myself. So I try to automate certain things. One of the big ones is 6 months before the trip, my clients get an auto email saying, hey, check your passport expiration date, because it's a great reminder, and it also helps to keep me in the client's mind and let them know I'm still thinking about them. But also that saves me work when I get a call a week before saying, oh my goodness, my passport's expired. So I do that. I will send out some emails about excursions, things, hey, you should be thinking about this. Just things that, especially my clients tend to book very far out, because families do kind of know when they can travel, especially around school schedules. So just some different reminders to let them know, like, hey, I'm still here. I didn't just, book your trip and say, have a good time in Mexico. So, but by automating them, that helps to take a load off my plate, because I know as soon as I get them booked, I pop them into my CRM, I click those buttons, and it's done.
Yeah, we spoke about a CRM a few weeks ago with the different CRMs, and I know different CRMs come with whatever groups you might be affiliated with too. So if you want to check out the CRM one, we have a discussion on travel tools that hopefully we'll pull up and we'll drop in the chat now, but from a few weeks ago. But auto reminders, it is smart, because I know passport was a major issue coming out of COVID. I think the timing now is 8 to 11 weeks maybe for routine service. So especially when you're going to Mexico, obviously you're going to need a passport.
Yes, and surprisingly, a lot of people don't realize that. So, and that's, and along with my passport email, I also talk about, you can't have a card, you got to have a book, because that's another thing that comes up quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, any other reminders that you just want to mention besides like the 6 month out passport? I mean, do you send any regular communications closer to the date of travel? Anything that you think would be good for the other advisors on the call to know about?
I do. So about a week before the trip, I will send a, hey, I'm sure you're getting ready. Here's some packing advice. Here's some do's and don'ts. And, if you would like to touch base for a phone call, please let me know and we can schedule a phone call beforehand. And I also send a welcome email asking for reviews 3 to 4 days after they get back. Usually people are settled back into life and back into the mode of checking emails and things at about that time. So
yeah, that is smart. I know we've had people talk about negative reviews a little bit on here, but it is smart to generate those positive reviews, because I know consumers, especially when they're getting back into work, they're getting back into their regular life, maybe they don't have that on top of mind. I'm just like curious, I mean, where do those reviews, do you have them go on your website? Do you put them on Facebook, on Yelp, or is it sort of all the above?
I encourage Google for the first thing, but also Facebook, because a lot of my clients do come from Facebook. But Google is where I really ask people to put reviews, just because you hit a Google search, what's the first thing that pops up on the side? The reviews. So
yeah, that's the first place everyone goes now for anything, is Google. So that's smart on your part. So earlier in the week, we spoke about that question I raised earlier in the call about why people should book through travel agents, why people book through you. And we spoke about some things that are features, or some details about these resorts in Mexico and the Caribbean that the travel advisors are well aware of, but maybe consumers don't really know about, and they make a major difference in your vacation. And I wanted to go through some of them now. Like you said, Ashley, most of your clients are families. So I think I was hoping we could talk a little bit about the knowledge you have that's going to be important to their vacation. And the first thing you mentioned earlier in the week is pretty much placing people in the resort and knowing where to place family groups and multi-gen groups, which is going to be make for the best experience for them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an advantage that we all have, especially if we're out there, we're traveling, we're going to resorts. Some resorts may look great. All resorts look great when you look them up online because they have marketing groups that they, of course, they're not going to take pictures of rundown rooms or not stocked buffets. But we've been there. We've got boots on the ground. So we know if, grandma and grandpa are coming and grandma occasionally has to use a walker, we're probably not going to put her in a resort that can be kind of hilly or a lot of steps. The same with younger kids. Some resorts, the kids club ages. Some resorts, kids club starts at 3, some it doesn't start till 4. So if you're working with a family with a 3-year-old, that's going to be really important. And again, that's not something that is easily found on Google searches for people. We're the one-stop shops, and that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, and I know some of these resorts, like you mentioned, are massive. I mean, I mentioned I saw you on a panel at Ascend, and we got to experience several ALG vacations resorts down there, and some of them are big. And keeping track of kids at these resorts and having to navigate resorts if you do have a mobility concern is something that consumers maybe aren't aware of when they're putting their credit card online.
Definitely. And along with the size of resorts come the kinds of activities, and working with multi-gens. My kids range from 10 to 16. So obviously my 10-year-old isn't going to want to do the same activities as my 16-year-old. So, knowing what resorts are great, have activities for all different ages. And what resorts may have a babysitting service so mom and dad can get a date night or something like that. And that's all things that we all know, and we don't necessarily view that as a way that we add value, because that's just our common everyday how we work, but it really is such a huge thing to the clients.
Yeah. And we spoke a little bit earlier in the week about suites and connecting rooms and things like that, and I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about that, about when families are wanting to go on these vacations, or when families are wanting to stay at these resorts, or multi-gen groups. I mean, what are those conversations like, trying to place families either in a suite or in connecting double rooms, or a different kind of setup? How important is that to your job?
It's definitely very important. I have found that just because families are traveling together doesn't necessarily mean they want to be together all the time. So that is something that I ask, are you guys looking for a suite, multi-bed suite situation? Are you looking for grandma and grandpa are going to watch the kids, so we need grandma and grandpa to be in the same room? Or is it like you're traveling with your in-laws and you need them to be close, but not in the same room as you for your own reasons? So that's something I ask. And also in going into that, price points too. We all know family suites are huge right now. And the newer resorts are building bigger family suites, guaranteed connecting rooms, things like that. But some resorts don't have that. So the inventory is at a premium. So knowing what resorts are, if we call, maybe we can get a guaranteed connecting, or what resorts won't do a guaranteed connecting. What resorts have their suite really only fits 5 or 6 people, whereas another resort suite may fit 10 to 12.
Yeah, and that is, again, that's something that I think is incredibly overlooked for consumers who aren't using travel advisors, or even the ones who are, who don't realize that travel advisors is doing this kind of work for them. It does really make or break a vacation. You mentioned your children range from 10 to 16. I imagine they have very different personalities, very different wants. during the daytime. So it seems like your firsthand experience as a parent of four really helps to add to your knowledge too.
Definitely. And I think, that's another value that we bring to our clients is we have been there, we have done it. So we can tell them, when you're leaving the Cancun airport, it's like the Hunger Games till you get to your transfer. And those, again, are things that people can't find on a Google search.
Yeah, especially I can see first time family maybe traveling to Cancun for the first time, having to wait at that customs line coming into Mexico, and then getting through, like you mentioned, to the Hunger Games. It can be overwhelming, I'm sure. Having someone maybe warn them ahead of time can certainly save them getting off on the wrong foot on a vacation.
Definitely.
All right, so we spoke about mobility concerns. We spoke about sort of suites versus rooms. Something you mentioned earlier in the week that again came up when you were traveling with your children was access to food. And I don't think people realize how important access to food is, especially with children. And again, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about this. What do you make sure of when you're sending families to these resorts when it comes to access to food?
Yeah, so in that goes across all different age ranges. If I have someone who's traveling with an infant or a toddler, looking at, does the resort provide baby food for them so they don't have to pack all that baby food, and you already got to pay for your luggage. One thing that was really important with my kids when we went down to Hard Rock Riviera Maya a couple of years ago was the availability of room service. Anyone who has kids, especially a little bit of a larger family, trying to get them ready for the day can be a mess. So, and then if your kids are hungry on top of that, it makes it even worse. So being able to order a light room service breakfast, some fruit plates, some pastries in the morning for the kids to snack on before we go down to a formal breakfast. Or if, my youngest one, she couldn't hang super late at night, but we're eating early. A lot of families do eat earlier in the night. So by 8, 9 o'clock, most kids are kind of ready for a snack. And my kids still to this day talk about the fact that they could order Oreo cheesecake on room service, and cheesecake was brought to their room. And after the second night of them ordering the cheesecake, all of a sudden they're getting 2 slices for each order because, the staff knew. And things like that, in like 24/7 cafes, more important for parents. If you're like me and you need caffeine to function in the morning, being able to run down real quick and grab that. Those are all things that I don't think a lot of people really pay a ton of attention to, because they're used to when they're at home, they can grab and go. Or if they're doing a car trip, they're bringing stuff with them.
Yeah, and again, like you mentioned, Ashley, there's a lot of this stuff I think we're highlighting might seem like common knowledge to a lot of the advisors, especially the 90 or so on the call, but a lot of consumers won't really pick up on it, won't pick up on the access to food or knowing where to place yourself in the resort. Stuff like that I think is incredibly important, and stuff like that should not be taken for granted by a lot of these travel advisors. We have about 15 minutes left. I want to ask about transfers. I'm going to ask about airfare, a few other things, but if anyone has questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll pass them on to Ashley as we go along. But you mentioned sort of the Hunger Games are coming out of the Cancun airport. Brian mentioned Amstar when he was talking about ALG vacations earlier in the call. I'm just curious. I know transfers are a big thing for a lot of clients, but you have a specific set of clients, families, multi-gen groups. How important are sort of transfers to your clients? And is that something you have to sort of be budget conscious of when you're making these bookings?
Transfers are definitely important. When people, especially if you're traveling with kids or if you're not used to traveling in general, you get off the plane, you finally made your way through customs, gotten your baggage, you want to get to your resort, you want to start your vacation. And you want to, that is really your client's first experience on vacation, on the ground, wherever they are. And you want to make sure that's a great first impression, because we all know those clients, sometimes you can have a small thing go wrong and it can taint the rest of the vacation. So transfers are really important to me. And again, that's another area where I look more at value, not necessarily at cost. Because having a private transfer may only be $20 more for the family, but it's going to be a way better experience. So one of the things I do when I quote is I only quote private transfers for my people, because a lot of people, they don't know any different. They don't know that a shared transfer and a private transfer are two totally different experiences. And that's why we are doing what we do, to help point that out and to help let them know, like, this is going to be the best way for you to go.
I mean, do you ever get any pushback on the, not just the quote, but the approach of a private transfer? Like, or do you ever get clients saying, hey, I can take care of this myself, or I can take a cab or stuff like that? Especially because it does seem like clients, especially ones who want to be more hands-on themselves, would maybe think they can save money by getting an Uber in Cancun.
Yeah, definitely. And for those people, I kind of let them know, you came to me for a reason. You came to me to make it easy. Why are you going to do work and all that? Let me take care of it. And I haven't really seen a lot of pushback on the private transfers, because in people's minds, when they hear private, that's exclusive. That is, they are like a VIP. They're walking out, their name is on a sign. Like, that's really that experience. I think just the word private, really clients like hearing that. So
yeah, it is a great feeling when you see your name on a sign coming out of the airport. I think everyone, even people who do that regularly, will admit that. So like you mentioned, you're in Rochester, Ashley. I'm in New York, so this isn't really an issue for me. That's why I thought it was so surprising when you were mentioning it earlier in the week. But we were talking about airfare, and you come from a relatively small market, and you said having firsthand knowledge of the layouts of terminals and airports is just incredibly important. And I was hoping you could share that with the rest of the people on the call. Why is having that knowledge about how far things are in airports and things like that, why is that so important for you? And why is that knowledge so important to have for your clients?
yeah, so I think we've all had those clients who they say, oh, I want to look at flights myself. And they send us those flights where, like, say from Rochester, you're flying to JFK going international, and you have a 45-minute connection. There is no way, even domestic, you're going to make that. And clients don't realize that. They think that if it pops up on the airline website, it's fine. Like, let's do it. So no, for me, especially living in a market where the only places I can go nonstop are Northeast hubs and occasionally Florida. Knowing what airports you need more time at and what you don't. Like, I know a 45-minute layover at BWI, it's tight, but it can be done. Whereas Atlanta, O'Hare, any of the New York City airports, I tell my people they need at least 2 hours.
Wow.
And again, that's really something that, again, clients aren't going to know. So traveling ourselves, experiencing it ourselves, it's kind of that do as I say, not as I do thing. Because I'm sure most of us will take the shorter layover and just book it. But that really, that's something that's important for the clients to know, and why it's important for us to educate and advocate. And again, show how awesome we are, because we are.
Yeah, I cannot imagine the panic of having a family, maybe with someone in a stroller and trying to get through JFK in 45 minutes, or trying to get to another terminal. There's so many different intricacies of all these travel plans that, again, we all take for granted. But consumers, like you mentioned, Ashley, they're sort of unaware a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So I want to ask about the next thing I want to ask about is excursions. We spoke about sort of the in-destination experience. We spoke about transfers. We spoke about the airports, and I was hoping we could talk a little bit about excursions. First, I just want to sort of ask you, because you have a specific set of clients, are excursions and destinations, are that something that's pretty common for your clients, or is that something that maybe is less common?
tends to be less common for especially my clients with younger children or where this is their first trip out of the country. And I think that's just they want to have a comfort level just with that first experience. Now, some of my older clients, my teens, they like the excursions. They want to go and see the sea turtles, or one big one, especially if kids are getting pulled from school, is I have a bunch of parents where they go to the ruins, get a little history in there, and make it a little educational. So it's something I ask every single client. And another way that I kind of help to add value or help to guide them is, knowing the different seasons for things, like knowing if they're going during whale shark season. That is a really unique and special experience. So asking them, hey, this is going to be a thing while you're down there. Is this something you may be interested in? And then kind of going from there.
I'm curious, at what point in the process do you give them that proposal for excursions, or you let them know that there's stuff available in destinations? I mean, is it the start of the booking, or do you do it at some point when you're closer to departure date?
Yeah, so I don't want my people to be overwhelmed with too many details, especially if they're juggling sports and other kids stuff. So usually after I have made the booking, then I'll just throw it out there. Hey, what do you think about excursions? And if they're like, absolutely not, cool. But if they're like, I think I may want to, a lot of times I get, well, I don't know what there is. So I'll send them just a brief overview of what's available in destination. And then it kind of goes from there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Like I mentioned, I know it's sort of depending on clients, it's very different. But sort of like you mentioned, actually having that knowledge, having the partners too in destination, I think is important, because there's a lot of different companies offering a lot of different tours. Like Brian mentioned Amsar in the beginning of the call, and I know that's a great partner. But having the context, having the knowledge is going to be important too, especially in these sort of Mexican and Caribbean destinations. So I have a few more questions. Again, we have about 8 minutes left. So if anyone does have any questions for Ashley, please drop them in the chat. But I want to sort of give you a general one, Ashley. I know the value of travel advisors is being talked about a lot these days, not just by trade media like us, but by consumer media too. I was curious if you could give us your take on it, if there's anything that is sort of common knowledge for you that we haven't talked about yet today that isn't common knowledge for consumers or for those booking through an OTA.
Yeah, the biggest thing is there still seems to be a perception that booking with a travel agent costs more. So I am very, very transparent with my clients at the first call. I will come right out. I will ask them if they have ever worked with a travel agent before. If they have not, I will lay out, kind of what the process looks like for me. And I will explain to them that if you book an all-inclusive or a hotel, something like that, you book it on your own, you do all the work. The commission, which is how I'm compensated, is already built into that. So you can do all the work and keep your fingers crossed and hope that you picked the right thing. And you're basically paying for a service you're not getting, or you can let me do the legwork. You sit back, all you have to do is pack and make sure you make it to the airport. And then I am compensated through the commission, and it doesn't cost you anymore. That is the biggest. Education is huge for me. I'll educate people on my socials, just talking to people, even not necessarily looking to gain clients, but just to further the industry along. Because I think after COVID, a lot of people realized like this should be a thing. So. Yeah.
I mean, do you get surprise reactions when you mentioned, I mean, you don't have a fee structure in place, do you, Ashley?
So I do for certain things,
Okay.
Usually not for Mexico and Caribbean all-inclusive. For other trips that I may handle, I do charge fees. But people are surprised. They don't realize that's a thing. And I have noticed since, COVID, I have more people asking, what's your fee? How much does it cost to use you? Things like that. So I definitely think people are getting more open to paying fees, which is great. I'm hoping to institute some like plan to go fees, things like that coming up in the future. But we need to know our worth, and we need to know that we're providing a great service. And a lot of times the consumers, they don't know what they don't know until they don't know it.
Yeah.
And, you'll talk to people that say, oh yeah, I booked this trip on Expedia and it was fine. Well, it's fine until it's not.
Yeah.
So the education is really important for people.
Yeah, that's an incredible way to put it. People don't know what they don't know until they know it. That's a really smart way to look at it. So I have a couple more, but we have a question in the chat. It's a very specific question, Ashley, so I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer it. But Elizabeth wants to know if you have any suggestions for an all-inclusive adults-only resort in Tulum for a ladies' vacation, celebrating a milestone birthday. Is that something you're aware of?
That's not that far down south. Most of my people, especially if we're doing like a girls getaway or like a mom's getaway, it tends to be a little shorter. So I usually tend to keep them a little closer up Cancun hotel zone area.
Okay.
But if anyone is looking for a great getaway for parents, even parents, singles, couples, the new Breathless Cancun Soul it's got something for everyone, and it's now up at the top of my list for places for those short getaways.
All right. So hopefully that helps you out, Elizabeth. So we don't have a lot of time, Ashley. I don't want to let you, I don't want to finish the call without asking, because you spoke about your background and spoke about yourself earlier in the call, and you spoke about your clients. And I'm just curious, I mean, how available do you make yourself for your clients, both when they're traveling, when they're not traveling, when you're trying to juggle your own familial commitments and also commitments to your other career? What's sort of your protocols or your philosophy when it comes to making yourself available to your clients?
Yeah, so I think I kind of do things a little differently than some people. I have strict business hours. My business hours are in my email. I use a calendar app to have people schedule their calls, and those are very specific hours. I am a firm believer in work-life balance, and being a nurse all through COVID, that definitely drove that home even more for me. So when people are traveling, I am available. I do also give them during travel numbers just in case I, have a kid event going on or something. But when it comes to emails or things like that, I may be answering an email at 10 o'clock at night, but I'm schedule sending it to go out in the morning, because that helps to give me boundaries, but also lets clients know that there are boundaries. And so I do set limits with that.
Was that a hard lesson to learn? Because I know people, especially when they get into travel, they're so ambitious about this open-ended earnings they can make. And I know there's a desire and there's a want in your head to put in endless hours. But I mean, was that a lesson you had to learn, or was that something you came into the business with set already in your mind?
That's something I started from day one. But I had to start that because, I was working full time and I couldn't be available to do, certain things. I know a lot of us start with Disney when we're first starting, and I wasn't available to make dining at 7 a.m. because I got to get my kids ready to get on the bus. So that's kind of something I've had all along, and things I've instituted as it's gone on. I don't do business by text message. I don't do business by Facebook Messenger. I funnel everything to email, again, for my own sanity, because my inbox is my checkbox. And also, again, that sets limits and boundaries with the clients.
Yeah, I'm just curious. You mentioned a calendar program or a calendar app you use to set appointments. Do you have the name of that for everyone on the call?
Yeah, I'm probably not going to say it right. Calendly.
Calendly, yeah.
So in that, it's been really great to work with, and I have it connected right to my Google Calendar, which I live and die by my Google Calendar. So it's really convenient.
Yeah, so we spoke about a lot today. We spoke about we have another suggestion in the chat too, Acuity, which I've never heard of, but I have heard of Calendly a bit, and Ashley recommended it, so that's what I would recommend. But we spoke about pre-calls, we talked about in destination, we spoke about booking, we spoke about post destination. So I think we got a lot to sort of the value of travel advisors and what consumers don't realize when it comes to the value you all add to these kind of vacations. So I have one more question for you, Ashley, and I know we don't have a ton of time right now. We have a little less than 5 minutes, but I know there was a lot of advisors at Ascend too. I was at Ascend, and I was lucky enough to see you featured on the social media on the influencer panel with Apple Leisure Group Vacations. And I was curious if you could just give us a little taste of how important TikTok and social media is to your business, and if you have any tips for advisors who are maybe not on TikTok as a platform or want to just improve their social media in general.
Yeah, social media is huge. And I will tell you, TikTok, actually, this is Sarah, who's the head of social media for ALG Vacation. She shared something in our panel. TikTok has overtaken Google as the #1 search engine. So people, if you send them a thing about, a recommendation for a resort, chances are they're going to TikTok to look for videos. So, the cool thing about social media is that it all doesn't have to be the same. My TikTok, which I've only had for a couple of months, and I have like not even 150 followers. So I'm like, it's small, but I use my social media more to show people who I am, so they get to know me, and I show the good things and the not so good things, day in the life of a travel advisor. But it's definitely more and more people are using socials for searches and to learn about destinations. A couple of years ago, before COVID, Instagram was the big one, but now TikTok is really taking over. And I have talked to people who they have booked trips solely based on what they see on TikTok. So if you don't have a TikTok, I'm going to tell you it's very intimidating. That's part of the reason why I didn't start one. I'm a professional scroller. I can scroll for hours. Making them, not so much. But just do it. It's the way that you learn is by doing, and you're going to go back in 6 months and look at some of your early TikToks and be like, oh boy, but you know what? It's real. It's you. And your clients they are working with you for you. They are not working with you because they want a specific resort or something. You are developing a relationship with your clients, and that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better note to end on than that. Again, like you mentioned, price shouldn't be driving conversations, and that's something I've heard time and time again from all these tremendous advisors on this series. But Ashley, thank you so much. I know how busy your time is, how you are, and how lucky we are to sort of get it an hour or so of your time. So thank you so much for all your knowledge today, all your expertise, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on. It was great.
Yeah. Thanks again to Brian and to Apple Leisure Group Vacations for sponsoring this session. And again, I hope to see everyone back here in a couple of weeks to talk about FITs in Europe. It's a topic we really haven't covered yet, and we're very excited to do so. But thanks to all the attendees. Thanks to Brian. Thanks to Ashley. And I hope to see you all back here again very soon.